the meteorite. Don't be shy. Come on over. Rub it for good luck. I haven't won the lottery, but I rub it every day just in case. This is, yeah, I glow at night too. This is the biggest and the heaviest piece from the one that made the crater. It arrived here from the asteroid belt that lies between Mars and Jupiter. It weighs 1,406 pounds. The composition, 92% iron, 7% nickel, 1% trace elements that include iridium, platinum, cobalt, and even industrial grade diamonds. But the density is what makes it so heavy. It's very, very dense. It is called the Holsinger, named after the man that found it, Samuel Holsinger, in 1911 out here. But scientists still refer to it today as the Diablo Iron, because that's where it was found, along the rim of Canyon Diablo, 2 miles west of here. They believe it broke off or chipped off the main piece right before the initial impact. The second biggest piece is in New York City, inside the Museum of Natural History, and the third biggest is on display in Chicago, inside the Field Museum, each weighing close to 1,000 pounds. The turning radius of this lower parking lot, which is about 150 feet in diameter, was the estimated size of the meteorite that created Meteor Crater. I'm going to take you outside for those of you who are going to go on the tour and explain how this is possible, plus a lot more information. The tour is a hike on a portion of the rim. We start from where we are. We'll be walking at a comfortable pace, casual pace, but we stay as a group. We stay on the trail. We'll make a few stops along the way. There I will tell you all about the crater, and you can take as many photos as you like. Welcome to Meteor Crater. My name is Eduardo. I'm going to be your tour guide, your hiking buddy for at least the next hour. We're going to be hiking 1 mile together. Like I said, inside, half a mile out and back. Going out, we'll make a few stops. I get to ask a question first. Where is everybody from? Where are you guys from? Orlando, Florida. Welcome. Virginia. Welcome, Virginia.
Orlando.
You're with the Orlando?
No, we're not with them.
Oh, okay. Huh?
Virginia.
Virginia.
Orlando.
Orlando. My little brother lives in Lake Wales, not too far away.
Yep.
About 50,000 years ago is when this happened. They believe it came in from the east. It came in fast, 26,000 miles an hour. To give you an idea how fast that is, if you were to get on an airplane in LA, you would be in New York in 5 minutes. Holy, not even enough time to eat your pretzels. Leaving the crater at 700 feet deep. But now, due mainly to wind erosion, the crater sits at 550 feet deep. It is 2 3/4 miles in circumference. And just to give you an idea how big that is, picture 20 football games being played simultaneously on the floor while 2 million people watch on the sides. If the Washington Monument stood on the floor right now, we'd be eye level to the top of it. In fact, it's 60 stories deep, a mile across. The reason I over-exemplify the size, give you so many analogies, is because looks sometimes can be deceiving to the human eye. The crater is a lot bigger than it looks. The meteorite itself went through almost total disintegration upon impact. It obliterated, it fragmented, it melted, vaporized, and ultimately disintegrated. The meteorite hitting with an explosive force greater than 20 megatons of TNT and forming this crater in all of 10 seconds. Now, the first people out here on this part of the planet anyways were the Native Americans, the Navajos, the Hopis, the Pueblo Indians, thousands of years ago. But the very first documented human interaction out here was a man by the name of Franklin Benitez, who was an Army scout in the 1800s. He, like everyone else at the time, didn't think too much about the crater. But because he spent so much time in the area, a lot of the locals that knew him and knew of the crater would refer to it as Franklin's Hole. It wasn't until an Hispanic shepherd and of course he would have to be an Hispanic, right? Come on, you guys, with a name like Eduardo? Just trying to keep it lively. It wasn't until this Latino, that's right, this year we're Latinos, last year we were Hispanic. When I was in college, we were Chicanos. I'm confused. It wasn't until this Latino, Hispanic, Chicano kind of guy found a good-sized chunk of what he thought was silver out here. He keeps it. He finds a few other pieces. When he finally decides to cash in, have it analyzed, they discover it isn't silver at all. But in fact, 92% iron, 7% nickel, 1% trace elements, what you and I know today is meteorite. The chief geologist of the U.S. at the time was a man by the name of G.K. Gilbert. Gilbert hears about the shepherd's find, comes out here himself, looks at the crater, and concludes that in fact this was a result of a volcano. Gilbert didn't have much information on impact size because, well, there wasn't any. But he was still, after all, the chief geologist, a very good one too. He was very well respected by the scientific community. I guess the crater was one of his first screw-ups. It was downhill after that for the guy. Another Geraldo Rivera. So much for the Hispanic theory, but they take his word for it, and once again, this crater is abandoned. 1902. A man by the name of Holsinger, a Forest Service ranger, was in what is now Tucson, Arizona, attending a small science convention. He was talking to another gentleman by the name of Daniel Moreau Beringer, a name to remember, a name you'll hear a lot of in the museum. Mr. Beringer was from Philadelphia. He was a mining engineer who happened to be a scientist as well. And the two guys decide they're going to come out here, check out the crater. When they arrive here by horse and wagon, Mr. Beringer looks at the crater for the very first time and says, "Hi, Chihuahua." He doesn't say that. Or maybe he did. The guy was bilingual. He could have said it. He says, "Holy schmackerel, this was caused by a meteorite." Way ahead of his time, and with dollar signs in his eyes, he goes back to Philadelphia. He forms Standard Iron Company. He goes on to Washington, D.C., files for 4 mining claims with the federal government on this land. Remember, Arizona wasn't even a state yet. And who, by the way, those claims were signed and authorized by a good old hunting buddy of his, whose name was Theodore Roosevelt. And Mr. Beringer comes back out here to find the meteorite. You see, folks, his theory was that it had come in straight down, thinking that the mother lode sat right below the crater floor, and he was going to make a lot of money. He also thought it was almost as big as the crater floor. You see, he was going to smelter the iron, sell it to the railroad as a businessman. The railroad was still being built. But as a scientist, he was going to prove not only to his peers, but the world, that this was an impact crater and that impacts could really happen. Back then, the idea of a rock falling out of the sky was not only crazy, but preposterous as that of a man going to the moon. Mr. Beringer was correct in thinking this was an impact crater. He was wrong in thinking that the meteorite was still sitting down there. At this time, if you'll stand, get a little closer, I'll tell you what's down there. Right in the middle of the crater floor is where Mr. Beringer starts looking for the meteorite. That white area that you see in the center is your Coconino sandstone, and that's where the main shaft is located. It goes down 200 feet. It's about 10 feet by 10 feet wide. To the left of that, a steam boiler and a cable winch, all mining equipment. The boiler in front, excuse me, I got something in my throat. Probably dust, dirt. The boiler in the front that looks like a barbecue grill from up here, is in fact 15 feet long, 5 feet wide, 10 feet tall.
Oh, really?
We have great barbecues out here, big ones. The cable winch was used to lower and raise men and equipment in and out of the shaft. To the right and in the center, an American flag. And to the left, an astronaut, a 6-foot wooden cutout of an astronaut. A reminder that NASA trained here before going to the moon. And the reason they did was so that they could learn geology. Most of the astronauts were pilots, but geology was important for them to know, so if and when they reached the moon, they could recognize an impact crater. The moon, just like the Earth, has both. And the difference made them recognize the impact craters and bring home some of the older moon rock. The rest is history. You can see the scars throughout the crater floor where Mr. Barringer continues looking. He later on decides it came in at an angle and starts from the north and starts looking and starts looking on the lower southeastern wall. Today you'll find 28 drill holes scattered throughout the entire crater that Mr. Barringer and his crew left behind in search of this meteorite. The year 1929, the beginning of the Depression, the stock market has crashed. Mr. Barringer has run out of funds, has run out of patience, and goes home. He dies unfortunately that year, and when he does, his children inherit the crater. It becomes Barringer's crater. They keep it. So then what happens? Well, a couple of things have happened. Arizona has finally become a state. The Grand Canyon has just been acquired by the government, turned into a national park. The crater is up for grabs. The Barringers approached the government to see if they're interested. Their reaction was, we already have one big hole, we don't need another one. It's in the brand new state of Arizona. Thank you, but no thank you, so the Barringers keep it. So then what happens? Well, I'll tell you. No, I'm not. Yeah, I better tell. The Barty Bar Ranch comes into the picture. The Barty Bar Ranch is the land that surrounds the crater, all the way around. It's one of the oldest and the second biggest cattle ranches in northern Arizona today. The size of the ranch, 300,000 acres. Wow. And back then it was made up of two families, the Chilsons and the Tremaines, two of the most down-to-earth people you could ever meet. They go into a long-term lease with the Barringers of Philadelphia, and in 1955, as an afterthought, form Meteor Crater Enterprises as a company. In fact, it's the Enterprises that employs me out here today as their head tour guide, as one of their public speakers. Everything from the RV park where you turned off at, the facilities here at the Visitor Center, the museum, the theater, my apartment. I was gonna make you lunch, but you didn't call me. I was gonna make you enchiladas and margaritas. The blender's on the table. I'm in trouble now. Chicago's going, come on, what's up with that? If I could, I would. I'm on the clock. To my employment, we are privately owned, operated, and maintained. It's always been that way. It wasn't until the early 1960s that the late Dr. Shoemaker proved to the world that this was an impact crater. 1968, the Department of the Interior declared the crater a natural landmark. Today, the crater is still regarded as a public trust. It is still the best preserved crater on the planet. It is still owned by the Barringers of Philadelphia. The Enterprises, now owned and operated by a separate group of people started by the Barty Bar Ranch 58 years ago. And that's your history. As I know it, up to date, short but sweet. George and Gracie, that's their names. We've also got some hawks out here, and they kind of get into it sometimes. But vegetation, wildlife, he missed his cue, right? I've done a little, from a distance this time of year, it doesn't look like we have much of either. You'd be surprised at the variety of both. I've done a little bit of research on vegetation since I've lived here for my own curiosity, I guess, and a lot of it is medicinal. was used way back when for arthritis, stomach ailments, the old way of healing ourselves. In the summertime, all this turns green. We get our monsoon rains and it can be quite beautiful, the desert. Right here in this little area alone, we have juniper, baby yucca, purple sage, rabbit bush, desert primrose, the Indian paintbrush already starting to bloom, the red flower, the pinon pines, scorpion weed, Mormon tea. It just goes on and on and on. The Mormon tea, the bamboo looking plant, is called Mormon tea because the Mormons used to make their tea out of this long before they settled down in Utah. But you know how it's a rule, Mormons are not supposed to drink anything with caffeine in it, such as coffee or sodas. This has something 10 times stronger than caffeine. They were completely wired back then, didn't even know it. It's like, okay, start for our tea. They were very productive people. They got to Utah from here in one night. And they were walking backwards. It's got ephedra in it, if that tells you anything. Yeah. It also has an antihistamine that they still put in Sudafed. So their sinuses were clear, very productive. And I wasn't kidding about the size. The ranch is so big that just a few miles up the road here behind the crater, as we quickly gain altitude, the ranch quickly turns into forest. And all of a sudden we're in the forest. We've got pine trees, a couple of small lakes. We're allowed to go fishing, camping in the summer, all the horseback riding and hiking we want to do throughout the year. Not a bad gig if you like the outdoors, and who doesn't? I have come face to face with coyotes, antelope, bobcats, a couple of mountain lions. That was a lot of fun. A couple of golden eagles. That was beautiful. Red-tailed hawks, ravens, lizards, reptiles, rattlesnakes, scorpions, tarantulas, lots of rabbits. That's just to name a few. What can I say? It is awesome and even magical out here in the middle of nowhere when everything is in full bloom, all the wildlife appear right after a good rainy day. We're looking at the crust of the earth in bits and pieces here. It consists of 3 layers in 3 colors. The dark brown, the light brown, and the white. It should be in that order, but here at the crater, everything is upside down because of the impact. Excuse the dust, yeah, careful with the dust. The dark brown is the youngest. It's called Moenkopi, and it's a sandstone. It was formed after the dinosaur period, 240 million years ago. It's like the red rocks you saw as you were coming in, the ones near the freeway. Moenkopi, sandstone. Then underneath the Moenkopi we have Kaibab. This is a limestone. This actually was once the ocean floor out here when this was under a big body of water. And that's why we find fossils. Ammonites, corals, breccias, limestone, Kaibab, 250 million years old. And then we have the Coconino, the white that I showed you on the crater floor, which is the 3rd and oldest layer at 260 million. It's a sandstone. And as we go further down towards the core of the earth, Journey to the Center of the Earth, good movie, I liked it. We have what we call our Supai Formation. And finally we hit our first water table, where we get our drinking and bathing water out here today from our 700-foot deep well. My point, when the meteorite hit the earth, it's moving so fast that it penetrates through these 3 layers. It uplifts, it compresses, and flips over. All in 10 seconds. So now we have a crater. But we also have what we call inverted stratigraphy. And that only means everything is upside down. Get it? Chicago? Got it? Good. Folks, if you've got one and you have another one, you got to have a third one. If you have a crater and you have this inverted strata, you got to have an impact. It is indicative. And Dr. Shoemaker proved that it was in 1961. First, by doing the math, putting it in black and white, and then comparing the Nevada nuclear sites to this one on a much bigger scale. That's the only other way you're going to get this combination. Okay? Now the icing, that made believers, but the icing, the frosting, came that very same year, a few months later. The discovery of coesite and stishovite by the same man, Dr. Shoemaker. Coesite and stishovite are two minerals that can only be formed under this intense pressure equivalent to that of a meteorite. The only other way you're going to find these two minerals anywhere otherwise is if they're man-made in a lab. Since then, about 184 other craters have been proven throughout the world. This one is famous because it was the first and because it is still the best preserved. Okay? Did any of you ever see the movie Starman with Jeff Bridges? Good movie.
Yeah.
If you haven't, rent it when you get home. The last 30 minutes of it were filmed out here, and right here where we're standing is where a lot of the scenes were taken from. But it stars Jeff Bridges as an alien from another planet in human form, right? Who falls in love with a real human being played by Karen Allen. Towards the end of the movie, the alien is dying, and the only way he's going to live is if he goes back to where he came from. By this time, the U.S. government has found out that he really is an alien, and they're not going to let him get away. So they're chasing him down this trail. These helicopters are shooting at him because he's running down to the crater floor where his mothership is about to pick him up, take him home, so he won't die. Would you all believe that all my co-workers seem to think that when they came to pick up Jeff Bridges, they left me behind? You know, I don't even know why. I don't even know why they would think I'm an alien. I have my green card. I don't even have that, but don't tell anyone. Especially, here it goes. Especially the governor of Arizona. Nowadays, you just don't know for sure, right, Chicago?
Yeah.
Nowadays, the other two major motion pictures that were filmed out here were Meteor with Sean Connery, Natalie Wood, Damnation Alley with George Peppard, Jan Michael Vincent. The biggie was Starman. More recently, however, we've had film crews out here from Dateline, National Geographic, Discovery Channel, the History Channel. This year, we've got two still airing on the History Channel that feature the crater. Catch them if you can when you get home. One is called Meteor Fire in the Sky, and the other one is called The States. And yours truly, come out on both of those. So look for me on the History Channel when you get home. Now you can go home and say, I know that alien tour guide. That's an old root cellar. That's where they kept their food and liquids, like a refrigerator. A potbelly stove, the top of an old washing machine, the bottom of an old sewing machine, a bed frame, and the root cellar. These are reminders of how people lived, the way of life, 100 years ago when this was still part of the Wild West. Mr. Behringer's house right over here. Follow me. The room with a view, yeah. This is my summer home. Okay. All righty. Built in 1911, Mr. Behringer's house. This is where he stayed when he was here. He had a crew of up to 80 guys on the floor, but this is where Mr. Behringer worked out of for most of the time. 1929, when he moved away back to Philadelphia, some of the local cowboys moved in from the ranch. But it was a woman by the name of Emma Chilson, one of the ranchers' wives, who opened it up to the public for the very first time as a very small museum. In January of 1942, people started driving from Interstate 40. They would drive up this bumpity old dirt road, come up here, pay Emma all of 25 cents to take a look at the pieces of meteorite she had on display, walk outside, take a look at the crater. All of you are very lucky though. You came to visit on a day when the winds are not blowing like crazy. Today is a calm day for us. We have clocked wind gusts up here as high as 180 miles an hour. I am not kidding. You literally fly, you just have to know how to land. Has picked me up, there goes Eduardo. They could not keep a roof on the building because of the winds. They tried cable wire, mounted onto the beams. They tried other methods, nothing worked. Ultimately, though, obviously, someone either fell asleep one night with a lit cigarette or knocked over a kerosene lamp. The roof caught on fire, it burned. The rest of the building was destroyed by wind itself. Headquarters were moved over to where we are today in the mid-1950s and were rebuilt. We have one more stop.